Daniel had learned that exile did not announce its tests in advance. Some arrived suddenly, like chains and forced marches, while others crept in quietly, disguised as opportunity. By the time King Nebuchadnezzar dreamed the dream that would shake his kingdom, Daniel had already spent years in Babylon. He had learned its language, walked its streets, and served in its courts, all while carrying within him the memory of Jerusalem and the steady discipline of prayer. He understood that power in Babylon was absolute and unpredictable, and that the favor of kings could vanish as quickly as it appeared. Still, nothing in his experience prepared him for the terror that spread through the palace on the morning the king awoke in distress. Nebuchadnezzar rose from his bed unsettled, his heart pounding with a fear he could not explain. A dream had come to him in the night, vivid and heavy with meaning, yet the details slipped from his grasp like smoke. He knew it mattered. He knew it carried a message beyond ordinary sleep. The dream haunted him not because he remembered it clearly, but because he could not. Convinced that the gods had spoken, the king summoned his magicians, enchanters, astrologers, and wise men, demanding that they tell him both the dream and its interpretation. He declared that failure would mean death, for he believed that true wisdom would not need hints or reminders. The wise men were stunned. Never before had a king demanded such a thing. They pleaded for the dream to be told to them, arguing that no human possessed the power the king demanded. Their words only fueled Nebuchadnezzar's anger. He accused them of deceit and delay, convinced they sought to manipulate him. In his fury, he issued a decree that all the wise men of Babylon were to be executed. The order spread swiftly, carrying panic through the ranks of scholars and advisors, including Daniel and his companions, who had not even been present when the demand was made. When the captain of the guard came to Daniel with the news, Daniel listened calmly, though the weight of the situation pressed heavily upon him. This was not a problem that skill or learning could solve. Babylonian education, sharp intellect, and political wisdom were useless in the face of a forgotten dream. Daniel asked why the decree was so harsh, and when he understood the full situation, he requested time to seek an answer. His request was bold, yet respectful, and God granted him favor in the eyes of the king's officials. That night, Daniel gathered his friends and told them everything. They prayed together, not with panic, but with urgency, asking God to reveal the mystery so that their lives and the lives of others might be spared. For Daniel, prayer was not a last resort, but a first response. Exile had taught him that dependence on God was not optional, it was essential. As the night deepened, Daniel remained awake, his mind alert and his heart open. Then, in a vision, God revealed the dream and its meaning to him with clarity and completeness. Daniel's first response was not relief, but praise. He thanked God openly, acknowledging that wisdom and power belonged to him alone, that he changed times and seasons, raised up kings, and brought them down. Daniel understood that the dream was not merely about Nebuchadnezzar's anxiety, but about God's sovereignty over all kingdoms, including the one that held Daniel captive. Strengthened by this understanding, Daniel went immediately to the captain of the guard and asked that the executions be halted. He declared that he could reveal the dream and its interpretation to the king. When Daniel was brought before Nebuchadnezzar, the king examined him closely. Daniel was young compared to the seasoned advisors who had failed, a foreigner whose people had been conquered. Yet there was something steady in his presence. The king asked if Daniel could truly do what no one else could. Daniel answered carefully, making it clear that no wise man, magician, or astrologer possessed such power. He said plainly that the answer came not from human ability, but from the God of heaven, who revealed mysteries. In those words, Daniel redirected the focus away from himself and toward God, even as he stood before absolute authority. Daniel then described the dream exactly as it had been given. He spoke of a great statue, towering and terrifying in appearance. Its head was made of gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, and its feet a mixture of iron and clay. As the king listened, recognition flickered across his face. Daniel continued, describing how a stone, cut without human hands, struck the statue at its feet, shattering it completely. The fragments were carried away like chaff, while the stone grew into a great mountain that filled the whole earth. The room was silent as Daniel moved from description to interpretation. He explained that Nebuchadnezzar himself was the head of gold, ruler of a kingdom of strength and splendor, granted authority by God. After him would come other kingdoms, inferior in some ways yet still powerful, each represented by the metals that followed. These kingdoms would rise and fall, none lasting forever. The final kingdom, symbolized by the stone, would be established by God himself, never destroyed, and would endure when all others had passed away. Nebuchadnezzar listened in awe. The dream that had tormented him now stood clear before him. Not only remembered, but understood. Overwhelmed, the king fell prostrate before Daniel, honoring him and acknowledging the greatness of Daniel's God. He declared that Daniel's God was the God of gods and the revealer of mysteries. Daniel was promoted to a position of authority, and his friends were appointed to roles of responsibility. Yet Daniel's heart remained unchanged by success. He knew that elevation did not mean safety and that favor could not replace faith. The dream marked a turning point not only in Daniel's life, but in his understanding of exile. He saw more clearly than ever that Babylon's power, though immense, was temporary. The walls, the armies, the throne all would eventually crumble. Exile was not proof of God's absence, but part of a larger design unfolding across generations. Daniel continued to serve faithfully, carrying this truth quietly within him as years passed and circumstances changed. Though the king acknowledged God in that moment, pride returned to him in time, as it often does to those who hold power. Daniel watched as Nebuchadnezzar's confidence grew and his humility faded, eventually leading to judgment and restoration. Through it all, Daniel remained consistent, a steady presence shaped not by the moods of kings, but by the unchanging nature of God. The memory of the dream stayed with him, a reminder that human kingdoms rise loudly and fall suddenly while God's purposes move steadily toward fulfillment. For Daniel, the king's dream was not merely a demonstration of divine power, but a confirmation of everything exile had taught him. Faith was not about escaping foreign lands or influencing kings for personal gain. It was about standing firm in truth, even when surrounded by uncertainty, and trusting that God's kingdom operated on a timeline far beyond human ambition. Daniel lived knowing that he served an empire that would one day disappear, while belonging to a kingdom that could not be shaken. As he grew older, Daniel often reflected on that night of prayer, the fear that preceded revelation, and the praise that followed. He understood that the dream had revealed more than political succession. It had revealed the nature of hope. Hope was not found in the endurance of Babylon or the favor of kings, but in the certainty that God remained in control, even in exile. Daniel's life continued to unfold in service, vision, and prayer, but the king's dream remained a defining moment a night when heaven spoke into the heart of an empire and a captive prophet stood as its messenger. In the end, Daniel's story in Babylon was not one of escape, but of witness. The king's dream revealed that no power on earth was ultimate, and Daniel's faith demonstrated what it meant to live with that truth daily. In a land shaped by ambition and fear, Daniel walked with quiet confidence, knowing that the God who revealed mysteries also guided his steps, and that exile itself could become the place where divine purpose was made unmistakably clear.